one is in the books. We are done. Eddie, the NFL is back. Welcome everyone to Across the Gridiron. I am Matt, and I am joined once again by my friend and yours, Eddie Equo. Eddie, we are here. New look. Week one is done. The NFL is back, baby.
Yeah, it's definitely back, and we can stop all the crazy predictions now, in terms of what's gonna happen because real football is back, and what a football weekend, man. I was, as always, I have like three screens, on a Sunday evening. I've got my laptop, and then I've got, the big screen at the back, and then I've got my phone. So it's like red zone, and then I pick two games that I want to look at. And it's just like football paradise, just literally just consuming that. So welcome to the show, guys. And we've got a lot to talk about. Week one delivered.
Week one did not disappoint. You're absolutely right. So thank you everyone for watching. The one thing we'll say as always, if you could please like, share, and subscribe, all of those usual bits and pieces. And look, we're going to have a bit of a packed show today. We're going to start this one. We're going to pick out some of the games that we saw the most sort of talking points. We will then look at some of our sort of things that we're going to look ahead for going into week two. But the thing is with week one, Eddie, it was an absolute crazy weekend of football. The week one often throws up a lot of wild games, wild dramas, things that we weren't expecting. But despite all that, we think there's only really one place to start. You don't often get games like this in a lifetime, let alone a season. And I'm talking, of course, about the Ravens and the Bills. The Bills put a marker down on this one. I mean, they were what, 15 points, 16 points down, whatever it was, with 5 minutes to go.
At a point 40-25, and I thought it was done. I thought that game was done.
Well, so did a lot of the Bills fans. They all left.
Yeah, the Bills fans at the stadium.
a lot of them are all left, and it was an absolutely insane game. So look, we're not going to go through the whole tale of the tape. There are other podcasts and other stuff. If you're watching this, you probably already know a lot of stuff already. But as we said, Bills are 15 points down. 5 minutes to go, and Josh Allen put his marker down for the MVP already. He took them. He took them forward to get that. He took them forward to get a touchdown. The Ravens then had a 3 and out, took it back again for a touchdown, and then a fumble. From the previously sensational Derrick Henry, who was fantastic all game until that fumble. And Bills were able to get the last minute 3-point field goal to win the game. And it was 41-40, I think, in the end, wasn't it? And just an absolutely brilliant game of football. You were just telling me before we jumped on it, you actually watched this all the way through. I don't know how you managed to do that.
I watched this game all the way through, and what made me stick with it was just the sheer action, right? I felt like I was at the movie theaters. I could have had popcorn, had some, because I always like my popcorn, and then have a bit of milkshake, to go with it, sitting in the movie theater. And like, when you go sit in the back, with the nice comfy chairs, you're sitting there, and then you're watching the big screen. And I felt like I was watching an Avengers movie, right? Especially like the last act of the movie when Thanos comes out and the Avengers come out, and everyone is just chaos, right? It was like every single drive was just action, right? It was absolutely action.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was that there were people that were making business decisions in that game, especially when Derrick Henry was running at you. Like there were a few times that he ran past some people, like as if they were statues. That people were like, "Are you going to touch him?" It was almost like as if
no.
each other. I'm not having that. You go at it.
Yeah.
You have.
I don't want any part of that. I am not getting in the way of that.
I don't want any part of it. How does that guy move? Honestly, it was so exciting. Derrick Henry, unbelievable. I mean, I think in one drive, he ran for 50 yards. It was literally There he goes. Yeah, he's galloping all the way. And as soon as Derrick Henry breaks that 20-yard mark, it's all over. You might as well just let him score, and just kick them and just let him kick the field goal and just go and start waiting for the kickoff return. He was incredible, Derrick Henry. And I mean, this is what we were talking about, when we are looking at this game previously, and we're like, for the Ravens, you just got to do what you do best and just let
Mhm.
Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson just run the show, right? And, listen, a few other players, dropped in, made a couple of catches and things like that. But it was the Lamar and Derrick Henry show. And
Yeah, no, without question.
it was just a little bit, I felt really sorry that as much as you remember that game, for what Derrick Henry did, you also remember the game for what Derrick Henry did not do, which was secure the football,
Yeah.
because that fumble was the turning point. And if that fumble happened like in the first quarter, no one will be talking about it,
No,
right?
no.
Because timing is everything. When you have those kind of moments, it's so important. And Josh Allen, right? I I don't know what to say about, because I mean you've picked him to go to the Super Bowl. You picked him as your
Mhm.
MVP.
Yep.
And he might just be the best quarterback in the league right now. And I know that you have to defer to Mahomes because of
Mhm.
all the things that Mahomes have done. But when you just, turn the tape, not the tape, because we're not tape guys, but when you just turn the TV on and you're watching Josh Allen play, he just seems like he's figured the game. He's figured it out. He's figured when to run, when to pass. There was this move that he did, right, where he did like a shuffle. I was like, wait, hold on. He's doing shuffle passes too, as well, in the game. Josh Allen was great. And there were a few people in the Bills, that emerged in that game. Kincaid, he certainly stood up the tight end. I mean, Josh Allen is not known to like throw to tight ends most of the time. So that was very interesting, that he showed up in that game quite a bit. And James Cook did what he was supposed to do. The reason why he was, asking to get paid, because you need to have, good players around good players, because guess what? It just makes everyone better. So they've got a squad right now that, in terms of putting points, when you start the first game of the season and you put 40 points down, right? That is ridiculous. That's the Lions thing. This is what the Lions were doing last year, scoring 40 points for fun.
But the thing is that the Lions weren't doing it against Buffalo, against Baltimore, right? For me, this was proper marker. I mean, you just. I mean, I know we're not going to talk a huge amount of stats, but just to back up what you were saying, with Derrick Henry, he had 3 runs for for 30 yards or more, and he finished 169 yards. Big performance from him. Lamar Jackson, 279 yards and 3 scores of his own. Yeah, he was, again, Lamar Jackson in the pocket was just playing some unbelievable plays. That there was at one point, again in the fourth quarter, probably the reason why everyone thought the game was done. I think there was one play inside his own tent or whatever else. He was basically just running around, absolutely just putting a dagger in the heart and demoralizing the Buffalo defense. But
Yeah.
but yeah, my guy Josh Allen. I can't say my guy because obviously as a Dolphins fan, I can't really like Buffalo.
You gotta
But
say my guy.
but
he's,
400,
he's my pig.
400. I know, but he was so good. 420 for all-purpose yards, 4 touchdowns. He absolutely carried that team, and it's performances like that. And yeah, that puts him in that MVP conversation straight away. Right, we're going to do a video that we'll release this week. It's all about sort of snap judgments. But for me, the main snap judgment is he is bankered to be the MVP purely on that performance alone. And the thing is, he's not doing this against Chicago. He's not doing it against a Vegas. He's doing it against Baltimore. Again, it's a stacked AFC because you've got the Bills, you've got the Ravens, you've got the Chiefs, who we'll talk about shortly.
Yeah.
He poured it out against one of their big rivals, and this was putting a marker down. They want to be that number one seed in the AFC, and they're probably favourites to do it now. But the question I want to ask you quickly before we touch on other games is, when you have big performances like that, when you have big comeback wins, you can look at it for two ways. Does this tell you more about how good the Bills are, or does this show you weaknesses within the Ravens?
I think it actually shows how rubbish their both defenses are.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
I mean, and that's the only thing, right? Because they talk about defenses winning championships, and if you start letting teams score 40 points, right, and you have to score 41 points to win games, you can't sustain that, right? At some point you've got to cut it down, right? You've got to be trying to not let more than 17, which is kind of like the average. When you look at the top defenses in a season, usually they allow an average of 17 points, throughout the season. So you don't want blowout scores like that. It's entertaining for all of us, but I'm sure the coaches will be going back and saying, "Oh my goodness, we were as open as a fishnet with our fish." That's how the defense was. It was just like every time someone was doing something, it was just like the defensive guys, they seem to be the ones that were not ready. Now, I've heard people say that at the start of the season that the offense is the side of the ball that is more ready to begin the season, and then the defense, slowly comes along. And they've got to figure out a few things and things like that, because you don't know, like, the offense will come, like everyone talks about the 15 plays that the offense comes and starts with. It's all scripted and everyone knows what they're doing. But the defense, you don't have that, because you have to react to what the offense of the other team is doing. So it takes a while for people to start figuring things out. So I'm hoping that that's the case, for these two teams, because it will be a shame, right, that one of them doesn't go all the way because of the defense. Last year we were talking about Cincinnati Bengals. They were scoring 30 points and still losing games, right? You don't want that to be the case. So I think for me, the defenses, have to shapen up, going forward, because you can't afford to be letting 40 points.
No, but sometimes when the offense is that good, sometimes you've got a standard deployed. But we want to see games like that. You wouldn't have stayed up till that late at night if it was two amazing defenses, would you? Let's be honest.
No, I agree.
No. All right, well, let's move on. And there's a couple of games we want to touch on. We've talked about the two of the big teams in the AFC, and I'm just going to slightly put a spanner in the works, a running order that we kind of agreed on. And I just want to quickly touch on the Chiefs, because the Chiefs lost.
They did lose.
Now, this doesn't happen that often. And we talked about this quite extensively in our predictions video. And I think you went for the Chargers, didn't you?
I did.
And I was going to pick the Chargers if you hadn't picked the Chargers. I thought, okay, well, let's just mix it up a little bit, just so we got something different. So I went with the Chiefs, and we'll go through all that in our predictions video, which will be out sort of later on this week. But yeah, let's touch on, because this was still a big surprise. So they were against the Chargers, and the score ended up, let me just pull it up. So it was 27-21 to the Chargers. Yeah. There were there was a few sort of missed opportunities for for the Chiefs, particularly when obviously they missed extra points. They obviously missed a 1-point conversion. They then tried to follow up on the next touchdown by doing a 2-point conversion. That also failed.
3 points.
I mean, I had Chargers as kind of one of my dark horses this season, but still, to go away to the Chiefs, who don't lose it often, to win that was quite a big shock.
It wasn't a big shock to me, so to speak.
Clearly, you predicted them.
because when we're making the case for the Chargers, we're looking at all the things that the Chargers have been doing well. We're looking at the gaps within the Chiefs, right? Rashee Rice being suspended. They were going to be relying on Juju Smith-Schuster, and Travis Kelce probably has got his mind in other things, right? As he prepares for his wedding and all of that. And they were playing in Sao Paulo, so that didn't have the whole Chiefs kingdom, behind them. And I thought that would always play a little bit of a part in this game, because there wasn't really a home field advantage. It was just going to be, two teams, playing, and it was about time, right? The Chargers don't win against the Chiefs. I think they've lost, like, when I was looking this up, they've lost like 7 consecutive times, against the Chiefs. Like they play in the same division, and the Chiefs owns them. But now, if you look at that division, now you're thinking, oh, Chargers, they're probably sitting pretty, in that division, right now. And Justin Herbert, everyone has been talking about, the promising young quarterback that he is. And everyone keeps putting him in that top 5, top 6 quarterback, and you keep saying, well, but he hasn't done anything, right? I know he has like some crazy statistical, season as a rookie, as a quarterback, with 1,000,000 yards and all of that. But I'm just like, at the end of the day, I haven't seen you gotten over the team in your division that you need to beat them at least once or twice, right? And so maybe this is the changing of the guard, from that perspective, from the Chargers perspective. But I just loved it. I love, what the Chargers did. Keenan Allen still shows that he still got it. He was popping up, in the game, making crucial catches and plays, to help the quarterback out as well. So, yeah, it puts pressure on the Chiefs. I think it certainly
Mhm.
does. It puts pressure on the Chiefs. Um, I don't know if it means much, because you know how the Chiefs operate. They can look mediocre, and still make it to the Super Bowl. But it was great to see the Chargers win.
No, absolutely. I think it's great. I think it was a fantastic win for LA, and I think, yeah, I mean the Chiefs, they don't lose. They don't lose often, shall we say? Obviously, the biggest thing for them potentially is they've potentially lost Xavier Worthy, potentially could be up to 3 months dislocated shoulder, I think it is. So that's, they've got some questions on the wide receiver, and I'm sure you've got some hot takes for for that, on that when we do our sort of snap reactions video. So yeah, let's move on then to let's move on to the next one. Let's look at, well, yeah, let's move straight over to to Cowboys corner. Now, we started the NFL, the 2025 season kicked off on Thursday night with the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions, Eddie's favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, as they destroyed a Dallas Cowboys team. Okay, it was a tight win. But Eddie, look, I'll let you off the reins. What did you reckon to, first of all, the Cowboys performance, and then you can maybe talk for 1 minute on the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the death of the Cowboys has been slightly over exaggerated, right? So stories of the Cowboys' demise, have been slightly, over exaggerated. So everyone should just pump the brakes, because America's team is back, right?
Oh, come on. Come on. Good God. I don't even think you believe what you say these days, Eddie.
I didn't sound very convincing. I
No,
rehearsed that so
you
many
didn't.
times,
You didn't.
just to deliver that with all the conviction in the world.
Yeah, so have you got your Jerry Joe's tramp stamp on your back now? Have you?
He actually sent me a text the other day and said, "Listen, you need to sound as convincing as you can, for the Cowboys. Don't worry, Jerry, I did my best."
Yeah, you're not
Listen,
fooling me.
I I thought I was gonna be watching that game behind the sofa,
Mm-hmm.
because with what was everyone knew what was happening with the Cowboys. You traded away your best player. You're going into the Eagles camp, they're dropping the banner, Super Bowl champions, green and all of that going on. And, I don't know about green and blue. They don't tend to mix very well. So I just like thinking, this Cowboys team, can they show me something? The one thing that I always know, and you'll always hear me talk about this, is Dak Prescott.
Mhm.
I love me some Dak Prescott, and I still believe that he was stolen out, of an MVP. The year that they gave it to Lamar Jackson, right? That was a Dak Prescott MVP that they took away from him, and I'm not
Yeah.
bitter. Right? So I'm just,
No, because I say you let it go, Eddie.
I just say so I was expecting that game, to be a Saquon Barkley show. I thought what we saw in the Ravens was going to happen to the Cowboys, where every time you look at it, you saw Saquon Barkley just galloping all the way to the end zone. Um, and the Cowboys started this game, Dak Prescott drove down the field, touchdown. I'm like, oh, okay. CeeDee Lamb sighting. I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on here? So the Eagles responded. The Cowboys go back, score another touchdown. I'm like, oh, okay. Is this how we're gonna do it? Is this how you wanna tease us? But there lies the problem. As a Cowboy fan, Cowboys like to tease you. It's the hope that kills. And just kind of just dangle it just a little bit, just to make you think that they were almost gonna do it, but they didn't. Um, I don't know what that game says, right? Because I remember last season the Eagles always played down to the level of the team that they were playing against, and there were a lot of times you came back after a game and you were like, why were they struggling to beat that team, right? And they were just getting wins, right? This sort of performance reminded me of what the Eagles did last season, because there were times that they were very mediocre and just doing just enough to win. And you thought at some point the luck was going to run out, but it didn't. It took them all the way to the Super Bowl. So maybe they think that this is the formula that they're going to use, to just being successful. We're not going to be flashy. Saquon Barkley doesn't always have to go for 100 yards. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to throw for 200 yards. We just have to wait, be mistake free, and then hope for the other team to make a mistake, which is exactly what happened, right? And just like the Ravens we're talking about, the player that you depend on the most was the player that actually let you down in CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb catches two of those balls out of the four, we might be talking about a different outcome of that game, because the Cowboys took it to the Eagles, or should we say the Eagles played down to the Cowboys level. So we wouldn't know until week 2, right? What is really the truth between those two players. But I like what I saw in the Cowboys. The offensive line looked great. They held up. Dak Prescott had time in the pocket to throw. A couple of the rookie offensive linemen, they were all right. I'm not a tape guy to start analyzing what they did, but it just looked to me that Dak Prescott wasn't running for his life. And for me, that's the bar, right? If you're a quarterback and you're running for your life, then your offensive line is not really that good. And but I want to see more from other players, in the team. I don't want it to be a CeeDee Lamb or bust, right? Because it's too easy for people to take CeeDee Lamb out of the game if they really wanted to. And that there are coaches that are going to do that. And they're going to say, let's see if somebody else can step up, so Josh Pickens and the rest. But I think for me, the game was close. It was a loss, no moral victories. I think now for the Cowboys, it's like, okay, what are you going to do in your next game? And the Eagles is going to be, are they going to just do this for every single game? I head back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I was. I mean, I wasn't going to watch it behind the sofa like you were, because obviously I don't have as much skin in the game as you do. But I thought it would be a bigger performance like that. I think that the Cowboys, they ran the Eagles a lot closer than I think anyone would have expected. I think what didn't help Philadelphia is a, a certain man called Jalen Carter, who decided to.
Got
I
to talk
mean,
about that.
I mean, inexplicable. Like, hadn't even been a first snap, right? And then he goes and spits on Prescott. Absolutely moronic behavior. And the thing is, look, I know they ended up winning the game, but that really affected the Eagles, right? He gets ejected from the game straight away. Cowboys go straight up, and they score on their first possession. They were basically run for a massive, Carter-shaped hole in the defense. He could have cost them that game just by doing something as miraculous. If we have a new feature, moron of the week,
Yeah.
every week,
Yeah.
it would be Carter. It was a brain dead thing to do. I mean, you must have been looking at and thinking. I mean, obviously it benefited your team in the end. You got an extra 15 yards, and they lose one of their a pretty good defensive player. But I mean, it's just so stupid.
Yeah. If I was in the crowd, I would be doing na 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 na. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye.
Well, maybe not if you're in Philadelphia, you probably wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that wouldn't have ended so well.
No.
Listen, what he did was inexcusable, and I've since heard lots of people try and make excuses for him and say that Dak Prescott baited him. I'm not having any of that at all, and it's not because it happened to a Dallas Cowboy player, but I think that spitting on someone is just absolutely disgusting. I mean, we had it over here, right? There was Luis Suarez, where he did antics like that, and I think he got banned for like several games. Because of things like that, he was biting people's ears. I mean, it's just like you just don't do that. One is like, I understand competitive tension between opponents, people that you're competing against. But when you start doing stuff like that, it's almost a lack of respect, not just for the player, but also for the game that you're playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm going to behave in a way that it just fits me. And for me, I think that he should get banned more. I think he should get banned more.
Definitely.
I think you need to set an example. Like, there is no way that we tolerate that. And I know people are saying already, he was ejected out of the game. That should be punishment enough. No, because actually, quite coincidentally, Luis Suarez was in the news again. In the American, he's playing in the MLS now or something like that.
Yeah.
And he just spit on someone in a game, and he's been
God.
banned for 6 games. Um, so, and I remember there was a time where was this Jamie Carragher did that to someone too as well. That was, I think if everyone had the same kind of reaction, that you just, I mean, I can't even comprehend how that even features as a response, for you to now, take on another player. So boneheaded for me. Um, he made a difference in terms of his absence in the game, because they had to restructure the whole game, in terms of who does what and all of that. So fair play to them to able to sneak out a win. But yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he he nearly cost his team, but luckily for Eagles, that there was also a massive Micah Parsons shaped hole in the
Yeah,
Cowboys defense. And Cowboys in the end, they just couple of questionable defenses or questionable calls on the Dallas defense side. Eberflus working the Chicago Magic again. But I think ultimately all the action was in the first half, where there was basically going back and forth, back and forth. Then second half there was just 3 points in it, right? But at the end of the day, it's not the worst start for the Cowboys. You look good in defeat, which I know is not what you want to hear, especially against Philly. But it is what it is, and I think week 2, I think we're gonna. you made such a big call at Dallas to get rid of Parsons, trade Parsons so soon to the season starting. Right, there's a lot of games you need to cover in so close to the season starting. So let's see how they pick up in week 2. Let's move on now. We're going to touch on this very quickly because I can't be asked to talk about this one too much, and that's the Colts destroying the Dolphins. Yeah, look, I'm wearing white. I'm already waving the white flag on the Dolphin season. Oh my God, this was embarrassing. I said in my predictions video that Miami have to win this game because
Yeah.
they're on.
Yeah, I went for the
But
Dolphins. Wow.
I know it was awful, awful. If we just look at, I'm not even going to touch on Miami too much. They got absolutely flogged. Colts won a 33-8. The
Yeah.
biggest talking point out of this is first of all, the Colts have snapped this 11-game losing streak they have on week 1, so fair
Yeah.
play to them. But
Yeah.
also fair play to Daniel Jones, someone who we talked a fair bit about last season. He got booted out of New York. It didn't work for him over there. And he's now found a home at the Colts. And, they make the call, the Colts at the beginning of the season, to move on from Anthony Richardson. I don't know if Richardson's even second or third choice QB at the moment, but they've given the starting slot to Daniel Jones, who dominated the game, to be fair to him. 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. Is he going to, is this a one-off game in terms of, the hype and the adrenaline of week 1, or is this something that could be more substantial? Is he going to be another Sam Darnold? We will see as the season goes. But I mean, I'm sure this wasn't one of the games on one of your many screens, Eddie. But what do you make of this score?
No, so I had to watch this one a little bit later on. I think I even tweeted, at the time when I turned the screen on, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Because there was a time when it was a big fat zero beside the
There
dog.
was.
and,
Yeah.
and so, and it seemed like someone had frozen the scoreboard, on the Dolphin side. It wasn't working because the points just kept getting added on the other side. I was like, what's happening? Someone needs to put batteries in the scoreboard on the Dolphin side.
They were missing a 4 next to the 0. That's what it was. It was.
Someone forgot to put batteries or light or something because it just wasn't moving, and the game was going, and it was just ridiculous. Your offensive line is no good, absolutely no good, right?
No.
Let's just say that. And you had a lot of old players coming back to haunt you guys. Xavier Harvin, I think that's how his name is pronounced. He was, jumping in and out. He was clearly trying to make a case for this was a mistake that you guys let me go. And Tua, we said this when we're doing preseason and we're building up into the season. We're saying we got to keep Tua healthy. I don't know whether this Tua is what you want, right? This Tua did not look anything good. Tua looked like Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones looks like Peyton Manning. This is this is exactly what happened in that game. I'm happy for Daniel Jones
Yeah.
because I think that maybe we might start to answer the question whether it is coaching that has been holding Daniel Jones back, or is there a talent there? Because you can see how coaching makes the difference. We saw that with Sam Darnold last season. He goes to O'Connell, who's clearly, a very good coach, and see what he did there. Could this be the case, for Daniel Jones in the Colts? And, it was an emotional day, for the Colts. They lost their owner during the off season. So there were lots of things that rided on that game, and it was great that they were able to sort of see a victory on the first day of the season. I mean, it remains to be seen how it's going to pan out, but everyone looked 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, in that Colts. Meanwhile, you look on the other side and you see Tyreek Hill is throwing a tantrum on the bench. Um, and he's not happy. Things are not going quite right. HN seemed to start well, and then all of a sudden, disappeared, in that game. So I don't know what to make of the Dolphins, but fair play to Daniel Jones. Fair play to him.
No, absolutely. I don't. You couldn't have asked for a better debut, right? He pretty much got everything right. I mean, 22 catches out of 29 attempts, 272 yards. Fair play. I mean, they literally won on every single metric: more yards, more passing yards, more rushing yards, more first downs, less turnovers. I mean, Dolphins just didn't show up. They were outmatched in every single department, right? And it's just not what we're expecting. And I think we've both got some pretty strong views when we give our sort of snap reactions video on Miami. So,
Yeah.
Hit that notification button for when that one comes out. So there's two more we want to quickly look at before we sort of maybe look ahead into week 2. And let's start with probably one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the summer. Big trade was Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who moved to the Steelers eventually from the Jets. And of course, who did his first game? Who was his first opponent in week 1? It was, of course, the Jets. And he won. And he was Aaron Rodgers is someone who's very magnanimous in victory. As you can imagine, came out and said, "Yep, I'm just happy to be anybody associated with the New York Jets." So yeah, really wearing his heart on his sleeve there. I mean, I don't think we need to talk too much about this one. It was just it was interesting. Obviously, the Rodgers went there and won. The one thing we can say is that if the Steelers have that Aaron Rodgers all season, they're in with a chance going deep into the playoffs. But it's whether they've got that Rodgers throughout the rest of the season.
They ain't with a shout, especially when in that division, how brutal it's gonna be. Cincinnati are also in that division as well,
Yeah, we'll
and
come on to them.
They came out with a win as well. So Aaron Rodgers, he had some shaky moments in the game. The New York Jets have a good defense, right? They had a good defense. I think what happened in that game, because I was watching that game because it was one of the 6 o'clock games. So I started watching that game. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, as well. I wanted to watch him, see how he was going to perform on the day. Justin Field looked good.
He did. He
Good,
did.
good in that game. Garrett Wilson, was doing stuff, and I hear they had a connection back in college. So it was good for them to be there, and everyone played. But Brees Hall, he looked incredible. The first couple of drives, he was just like pounding it and running through, that Steelers defense, and I was thinking, this is gonna end, badly. But Aaron Rodgers just showed, what he always shows, and Aaron Rodgers is one of the smartest quarterbacks, currently in the NFL. And he never seemed panicked. He never seemed, like he was out of it. He seemed composed. And it helps when you've got good players around you, right? It really, really helps when you've got good players around you. I mean, look at, Jalen Ramsey, the stop that he made against Garrett Wilson in the fourth quarter. That, pop that ball out, because if he didn't, the Jets were marching on to go kick a field goal, and win that game, as well. So the thing for me is that the Steelers didn't look like a Mike Tomlin and team, because that's usually built on defense, built on a running game. They didn't really have a running game in that game. But maybe this is what Aaron Rodgers brings, because Aaron Rodgers likes to throw the ball all over the yard. So, and maybe this is how the Steelers are going to evolve going forward. And maybe they start to build a system that potentially, when Aaron Rodgers leaves, they can bring in another quarterback that can thrive in that system as well. So, fair play to Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdowns. That's one way to start the season.
Yeah.
especially when you stunk it up the yard in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be happy to say goodbye to those 2 seasons at New York, and yeah, he enjoyed that win, let's say. And yeah, just quickly on the Jets, Justin Fields looked good, as you said. Gives them hope. Obviously, as a Dolphins fan, hope they don't get too much hope, but they actually had more yards. Yeah, they had more yards than Steelers. Total, 394 compared to 271. They lost by 2 points, 34-32. So lots of promise there. And hopefully they'll be able to, their fans will be hoping they can kick on. Let's stay in the same division as Steelers. Let's quickly, you mentioned Cincinnati, lots of talk about them. Had such a bad season last year. Lots of talk about them potentially being dark horses. But they finally snapped their record, or their hoodoo of week one. They beat the Browns 17-16, a lot closer than a lot of people would have expected. The main thing is they got the job done, and they have that W.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that the defense looked a little bit better, right? Which is something that we were talking about last season, about how they just used to give up 30 points for fun. It was a nervy performance, by the Cincinnati Bengals, and it is a thing, right? When you haven't done something, somehow it plays in your head. When you don't start the season well, and everyone is talking about it, you don't start the season well, it does do something to the players, and you don't play yourself, you don't play free, you're always at the back of your mind, thinking about, okay, what mistake am I gonna make? So it was almost like as if they were too afraid to play, in that game. Obviously we know what's happening in the Browns. Joe Flacco is the quarterback on the other side, so you're not expecting a lot, from them, to be honest. So 16 points, I wasn't surprised with the Browns' performance on the offense level, but that they've got a good defense. Myles Garrett, he was at it again already with sacks, in the first game of the season. So he's on his way already, to staking that claim as being the defensive player of the year. So it's probably going to be a battle between him and Micah Parsons, on the other side. But the Browns, you know what you're going to get in their defense. They're going to be solid. They're going to be difficult to break down. It was now a case of, can, Cincinnati do enough, to just win that game? And they were going to have to lean on their defense, because it wasn't going to be the offense that was going to help them out this time around. It was going to be the defense. So, which is exactly what happened. So I think Joe Burrow has got that monkey off his back now. Overall record still looks bad. It's 2-13, in the first 2 games of the season. But, you can almost start and write a new chapter right now. I mean, if they now go ahead and win their next couple of games, now we're not talking about permutations for them to get into the playoffs. If this team wins and then that team loses, and then that, happens, and then that happens, and they get into the playoffs, they can get into playoffs in their own merit. So fair play.
Absolutely. Let's just put one more game we'll touch on from week one, then we'll look ahead towards week two. And I've held it off for long enough, Eddie. I haven't wanted to do it because I know this is emotional for you, but let's talk about the Packers. Let's talk about Micah Parsons and the Packers. They look good. We said that, the trade of Parsons might make them a potential candidate for Super Bowl. And they played against a Lions team who were one of the best teams in the league last season, and they won. And it was, fairly convincing. It was a statement win, 27-13 against the Detroit Lions. It's hard for you to admit, Eddie, but this was a good performance. This was a little bit of a coming out party for the Packers. What do you make to them?
Still the worst trade in NFL history, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if
for Green Bay or for Dallas. I think a lot of Green Bay fans might disagree with you, Eddie.
I don't know if I'll ever get over this. this Michael Parsons trade, because this one hit home. This one was brutal, I have to say. But I tweeted out first play, Micah Parsons pressure on the quarterback, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, he's gonna be good. You can see that he's gonna be good. I don't listen. I don't care what Jerry Jones says, and he can say anything that he wants to his blue in the face. But this trade was probably the worst thing that he had ever done. As a Cowboy owner, as a general manager, you don't trade your best player. And in the season, in the season, it might not make a difference, but you're going to see what Micah Parsons does to a team that doesn't have the distraction of the Dallas Cowboys. They don't have all the, toxicity that happens. They're just players that want to go out there and play. And you can see how the whole team, gravitated towards Micah Parsons. It was like a wrestler, coming onto the stage. It was like as if, it was like, you hear the sound, broken glass, right?
Yeah, the glass breaks
Right,
and
glass breaks,
crowd goes wild.
and the crowd goes wild, right? And the
What a
Texas
thought.
rattlesnake, just starts walking down that ramp. It just felt like that. The Michael Parsons entrance, onto the pitch. Everybody just going wild. When he had his sack, right? You could almost feel the electricity transfer from the stadium into the pitch and just strike a dagger at every Cowboys heart right now, just thinking to themselves, yeah, we let that one go away.
We'll let that one go.
We let that one go away. Listen, the Green Bay Packers, I know I haven't even talked about the game, right? I
was going to say,
I just talking about Michael. I haven't talked about the game, but listen, I love what I saw. Jordan Love looked good. He looked decent, and Cobbs, he was just making play after play. They've got a young team there that they all feel like they can, almost come together, and they feel like they're on the cups of something. Like when a team, when you kind of feel like, ooh, okay, something is brewing here. That's how they played. They played like a team that they felt like something is happening to them, and they're expressing that in the way that they tackle. They made the Lions look ordinary. I don't want to say that the Lions played badly. I want to say that the Green Bay Packers made the Lions look that bad, right?
Yeah.
They look very ordinary. We still had, some key players. I could even find Aiden Hutchinson, in the game. I saw him flash a few times, but before he could get to the quarterback, the ball was gone, right? Jordan Love was efficient. Josh Jacobs did this thing, Reed caught a few catches, got a touchdown, as well. Coaching looked great. They didn't look like, they were panicking for anything. They looked like they were in control of that game from minute one to the last kick of the game. The Packers are going to be a problem. They're going to be a problem for everyone in that division and the NFC.
Absolutely. So, okay, so let's loads more stuff happened in week one, but we can't cover it all. There were some really, some good rookie performances, and really some not so good performances that that we can look at. But let's for now let's move on to sort of week two. So we're not going to give our predictions on this. We're going to give our prediction video another time. But just want maybe a couple things that looking forward into week two, given what we've now learned in week one, is what are you sort of looking forward to, or what's kind of one of the main things you're going to be focusing on when you watch your 7 screens next Sunday?
Actually, I do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do have 7 screens actually.
Yeah, but you also, Eddie, you also have a wife and 2 kids. So you can't just get all of them. Anyway,
so I think for me, week two is about teams that might want to do the Men in Black, for week one, right? Literally where they need to get that thing and just snap it and just forget about week one, right? So obviously you've got like your candidates, you've got your Dolphins, right? They want to forget about what happened in week one. So can they bounce back? With that, the Ravens, they want to flash week one out of their memory because they thought they did enough to win that game and they want to be going to the next game and thinking that they're going to do it. So I'm going to be looking at them. The Giants, what the heck is going on there, right? So I was looking at the Giants thinking that they were going to be decent this season. I was hyping them up because obviously I wasn't hyping my Dallas Cowboys because I don't know what the season's gonna look like. But I was hyping the Giants up. But actually, it's funny enough because in the preseason it was Jackson Dart that actually looked quite good with the Giants.
Mhm.
Russell Wilson hardly played. So I don't think it's going to be too long before the natives start getting very restless. Over there in New York land and start clamoring for Jackson Dart. I don't think that's going to happen, but the coach has not helped really. He's been very coy about whether who his starter is going to be in week two against the Cowboys and all of that. So I think, Russell Wilson probably has two more games before he has a lot of pressure. And if those two games look the way that they looked in that first game against the Commanders, yeah, I think there's going to be a change in quarterback. So I'm going to be looking at that. So teams to bounce back. The other thing for me is that I'm going to be looking at teams that, they had almost like a magical first game, first week. Was that a flash? Was that a fluke? Can they do it again? I'm looking at the Colts, right? Can they do that again in week two, right? The Raiders, they won that game against was who did they play again? The Raiders, the Patriots. They won the game against the Patriots. Drake May, I don't know if he's really injured. I saw him, coming off a little bit MP, in that game. But Geno Smith, he looked efficient as he always did, in Seahawks. So I want to see because the Raiders are in a very difficult division, right? They're also in that AFC West. So I want to see what they do in their next game. Um, I think the other team for me that I really want to see what they do in week two is the Chiefs.
Mhm.
Right. So the Chiefs had a so-so game, and we're going to go into our predictions. But I want to see what they do in week two. How do they adjust? With all the gaps that they have in the team. So I think week two is going to be interesting because now we've got teams that have put a marker down. Um, One last thing that I want to see in week two, I want to see a Mecca Ibuka, right? I want to see him. I'm so excited about that wide receiver. I think that he's got the makings to be a Justin Jefferson in this particular draft class. And I was raving about him in the preseason. He had this game and he had this touchdown pass, and it wasn't a long touchdown pass, but it was just the way that he caught the ball, in traffic, and just doing all those things that are hard for defenders to do. You still got veteran wide receivers that don't even do things like that. To have two touchdowns in your first real game of the preseason, that's saying something. That's saying to the quarterback, you can count on me.
Mhm.
Saying to the quarterback, trust me, get me the ball and I'll do stuff, with it. So I'm looking forward to seeing him, as well in week two.
No, absolutely. I mean, but for me, you mentioned the bounce back games. I think they're the ones that I probably got my eye more closely on because although it's two games in, if you lose your first two games, you see something quickly unravel, right? You mentioned it, and there are three teams who I've got my eyes who have all got home matches against teams they should be or could easily go out and beat. Dolphins are at home to the Patriots, right? Patriots also came off a disappointing defeat. The Dolphins, who have generally had a good record against the Patriots, they need to be going out and putting on a performance. You've got the Lions. We just talked about their performance against the Packers. If they lose their next game, which is at home to the Bears, that is a game they should be winning. If they go out and lose that, their season can quickly unravel. And they've gone from being everyone thought there'd be a drop off from last season. You lose at home to the Bears and you're 0-2. That's looking good. That's not looking good. And the other one is the Ravens. Again, we've talked about how good they were on the offense side. They're at home to Cleveland. Again, these are matches you absolutely should win, and we would expect them to win those games hands down. But if they don't, or they win and they don't play well, I think it's going to be the potential might be a lot of questions. So yeah, they're the ones that I'm looking at. I suppose the other one, it'll be interesting to see. Again, didn't have the best debut. We haven't really talked about a lot of the rookies. Maybe we'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
But Campbell didn't really light it up at Tennessee. I think it's fair to say he struggled on his first game. How can he put in the week 2 performance? But look, I think all in all, I think we can pretty much wraps us up for this week's call, as my screen goes incredibly fuzzy for some reason. I think it was a fascinating week. Week 1 always delivers, but it doesn't always deliver as it did yesterday or this weekend. So I will just take this opportunity again to thank everybody for tuning in and for watching us. And Eddie, for the first time of this season, take us home.
Yes. So week 1 is almost in the books, because as we're doing this recording, the Vikings are saying, well, hold on a second, hold my beer. We've not played today in week 1, but it was an incredible week. I'm really, really excited about what I see. And I think over the season, we're going to be looking at rookies that are emerging. This is why we love the NFL, right? You keep, replenishing the stock, as players are leaving, more exciting players are coming back in, and they're changing the conversation, changing the narrative. And then you've got all the veterans that are like, no, don't write me off yet. I still need to be part of the script. Don't kill me off in this movie. We're still stars here. So listen, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and turn that notification bell, as well. And let's have your say. What do you agree with? What are the things that we said, today that you might have a different view on? How did you enjoy week 1, and are you looking forward to week 2?
Cheers, guys. See you next week.
All right.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the